A few months ago, we talked about failed TV pilots based on superhero properties. These were hour-long or even feature-length episodes shot in a vacuum with the intention of pitching a television series to a network. They're a sort of proof of concept since the TV executives lack imagination to such a degree that they need to know what a typical episode looks like before greenlighting a full series. And while this failed pilot phenomenon was a lot more common in prior decades of live action, every once in a while, the land of animation can't quite get the ball rolling either. While live action has always had its limits for portraying such fantastical and reality-stretching stories, animation can do just about anything. If you can draw it, you can animate it. The sky's the limit for superhero properties in that medium, and we've seen dozens of animated adaptations of Cape and Cowl comics thriving and succeeding. But not all of them do. We're going to count down an eclectic list of those that didn't make it past that first episode. The first video did well, so let's see if adding one more word to that title completely destroys its SEO. And once again with me, my pal Cytonius is here to help me comb through these cartoons that never were. Be sure to tell us in the comments which of these pilots you think deserved a full series. Stick around, because we've got a lot to go over. Special thanks to this video's sponsor, Cook Unity. Cook Unity is a chef-to-consumer platform that delivers freshly prepared, restaurant-quality meals from award-winning chefs directly to your door. It's incredibly helpful for meal planning when you have a busy week ahead of you, and it saved me a ton of time during the holidays this year to eat these healthy and flavorful meals. With Cook Unity, you can choose your dishes from a list of hundreds of options with tons of variety, and naturally, my Filipino heritage compelled me to just pick anything with the word adobo in the name, and my wife loved that too. These meals are courtesy of chefs like Jose Garces, an iron chef who specializes in Latin American cuisine like this Spanish adobo chicken with paella. You just open one, follow the included instructions to cook, and you're ready to go. These meals are super convenient and are even cheaper than getting groceries for the same number of meals. For my job, I have to work long hours and sometimes meet rough deadlines, so Cook Unity is a great, fast, and healthy solution for me when I need a meal during a busy day of editing videos like this one. Even if you just microwave them, they don't taste like reheated leftovers, they taste freshly cooked, and the quality genuinely blows my mind. Cook Unity is offering my viewers 50% off their first order. Click the link in the description below and use my code GodzillaMendoza50 to try it out. Now back to the video.
Perhaps you might express an apology.
Apologize to you? Pardon me if I say poppycock.
Then say it.
Poppycock.
You let America down.
In 2002, Hellboy creator Mike Mignola was inspired by some action figures to create a new ultra-toyetic character. The result was a one-off comic published by Dark Horse called The Amazing Screw-On Head, about a secret agent robot that works for Abraham Lincoln, with a head that can be attached to a variety of bodies for various tactical uses. And as for a concept for something to be turned into action figures, that's actually genius. Like, I can totally imagine a toy line of different bodies all with the one interchangeable robot head. He's a fun, Hellboy-adjacent character that fits right in with that universe, despite being a little more on the comedic side than the headlining character. The comic is really manic and fast-paced with a dry sense of humor. It's got such an infectious energy and I love the tone, but it's also paired with Mignola's signature dark, stylized art style that makes great use of contrasting shadows and negative space to shape characters. It's an odd combination to have something so funny and colorful portrayed in such a dark and grim art style, and I think that's what makes it so unique. But in July of 2006, Sci-Fi.com aired a 22-minute animated adaptation of the one-shot comic with a questionnaire asking viewers if it should be picked up for a full series. And I guess everyone who watched it is some kind of stupid idiot Philistine that said no, because as of yet, this is all that exists of that series, and it's incredible!
Yes, it's as I always say. All really intelligent people should be cremated for reasons of public safety.
The animated version was developed and written by Brian Fuller, the guy behind the Hannibal TV series, which is another favorite of mine. I love the dry wit in this script, and it's brilliantly delivered by Corey Burton, Paul Giamatti, and David Hyde Pierce. David Hyde Pierce was also the voice of Abe Sapien in the original Hellboy movie, but was humble enough to decline credit for it and let Doug Jones take top billing for the role since he was the costume actor for the character. I respect the hell out of that. The guy in the suit never gets enough credit for these types of things.
I thought I was clear. You know something I don't know.
I'll tell you everything.
I want to know what this says.
In Screw-On Head, Pierce plays Emperor Zombie, who is given an expanded backstory from the comic as being Screw-On Head's former servant and best friend that betrayed him to become an immortal supervillain. His servants are also changed up to have more interesting gimmicks and more personality, and his girlfriend is a vampire that Screw-On Head fell in love with when she was alive. Screw-On Head is played by Paul Giamatti, and while he's certainly pretty funny on his own, and had some great action moments, I still think Emperor Zombie is a show-stealing character. I'd watch a whole series of this just for more moments with him. Visuals are also a standout. The footage is from an HD upscaled version, but even the original is a feast for the eyes. This isn't the only time we've seen Mignola's art style translated into animation. The two Hellboy animated movies kinda met in the middle by getting the right vibes with the character designs and stylized proportions, but still did pretty traditional lighting and colors. Those movies are technically in the same art style as Spectacular Spider-Man since they both had character designs by Sean Galloway. Even if the man didn't draw the character models himself, this looks nearly identical to Mike Mignola's art style. It's really cool seeing at least one example of that in motion, and I wish we got a Hellboy animated movie or two that looked like this. There's vampires, werewolves, zombies, steampunk robots and soldiers, ancient demons, and Abraham Lincoln doing an 1800s version of a video call. I've known about this one for quite a while, and it's frankly the one I was most excited to revisit and talk about for this video. I know it's been nearly 20 years, so it's way too late now, but I'll say, I would have absolutely loved to watch a full series of this if it had the same tone and execution as this pilot. We were truly robbed. Wait, no. This time, we got screwed. Yeah, that's a better closing line.
Yo, you know who it is, and for those of you that don't, I'm Cytonius, the opposite of Euphonius! From the YouTube channel Omni-Frame. And since we had so much fun talking about some of the most infamous and obscure live-action superhero television pilots, why not do the same thing for some of the most obscure failed superhero cartoon pilots? So let's set it off with our first entry, and that would be Rob Liefeld's Youngblood.
What the hell is Youngblood? Oh, Rob Druid. Oh, God. Is that the thing?
I'm sorry, but y'all could never make me hate Rob Liefeld. I love footless superheroes and pouches on hamstrings. Well, for those that might not remember, Youngblood is actually the flagship title that launched Image Comics. Youngblood was created by Rob Liefeld for his creator-owned comics company, Extreme Studios, and made their first prototypical appearance in the pages of indie press comics from Megaton Publications in 1987. But the team would later appear in their own comic in 1992. The premise of Youngblood focuses on a team of government-sponsored superheroes who don't really do a lot. Youngblood was a comic that was light on story and even lighter on originality. Originally, Youngblood was created by Liefeld as a 90s reboot of the Teen Titans that was going to be written by comics legend and new Teen Titans writer Marv Wolfman. But due to disagreements with DC's editorial staff, Liefeld would use the characters for himself.
Hey, look, it's Chapel! He starts crying during an orgasm in the HBO Spawn show! Sorry!
What is this, Gay Pride Day or something?
Youngblood the animated series was intended to air during the 1995-96 season on Fox Kids in an hour-long block that would have had another Image Comics-inspired animated series, Mark Silvestri's Cyberforce. These two shows would have been the fourth and fifth attempt at adapting Image Comics into cartoons during the 90s, with the first being Savage Dragon on USA Network's Cartoon Express, and Jim Lee's Wildcats as the second, and the third being the ambitious and, in my opinion, underappreciated Spawn, the animated series, on HBO. Youngblood the animated series was intended to air on Fox Kids as a replacement for X-Men, which was supposed to end in its fourth season. But due to the financial success of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Saban Entertainment bought Fox Kids and decided to focus on creating more Marvel shows and canceled Youngblood before it could get started. I'm not sure how long an animated Youngblood series would have lasted in the 90s, considering the comic only ran for about 14 issues, not including the many failed attempts at reviving the brand over the years. Do I think Youngblood would have succeeded if it had gotten a full season? Of course not. In fact, has anyone watching this actually read any Youngblood comic books? That's what I thought. Next segment.
In 2006, a Plastic Man pilot was produced by Tom Kenny and Andy Siriano. Andy Siriano once retweeted one of my videos and said it was pretty good. Featuring the Elastic Ex-Con facing off with a crook made of living water.
Plastic Man 1, Human Puddle, H2O.
I saved the city.
Do tell, do tell!
This wasn't Plastic Man's first animated adventure, as he actually had a couple of seasons of his own show way back in the late 70s, and it ran for a respectable 112 episodes? Damn, that's a lot of Plastic Man.
Of course, the old celebrity in the ice cream cart trick. It must be Toyman. Let's grab him.
So, with that history in mind, it made sense to take another shot at the character because he was popular with the kids at some point. Despite his horribly creepy powers and his revealing costume and his sensual, silky, smooth legs, you just want to run your hands down. Oh, thank God they put pants on him. Whew. The 2006 pilot came out among a lineup of superhero cartoons with more realistic and detailed character designs, but instead opted for something more toony and simplified. And the look of this evokes such a classic Cartoon Network vibe. Looking at this reminds me of Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, or Billy and Mandy, with its thick outlines and stretchy proportions and stylized characters doing insane things. There's a lot of comedy centered around Plastic Man's criminal past and him trying to make up for it while dealing with his grouchy parole officer.
Have you forgotten the debt you owe society? For all the crummy stuff you did back when you were Eel O'Brien?
Look, Archie, that was a long time ago. Now the name's Man. Plastic Man. I fight crime, catch criminals.
The animation looks smooth and it's got a lot of great visual gags that utilize his power set well. Unfortunately, Cartoon Network decided not to pick the series up and this pilot never made it to air.
The City Hall boys have taken 6 months off your parole. The bad news is, it's gonna take a year to build a new...
Damn!
The silver lining is that Tom Kenny would still get to reprise his role as Plastic Man in Batman the Brave and the Bold, which did get picked up for multiple seasons and a movie. And this same version of Plaz specifically was brought back for the 2011 DC Nation shorts on Cartoon Network, with crossovers with Batman and updated HD animation. He may not have gotten to his full solo cartoon, but Plastic Man endures. He's just a really fun character.
In the 90s, Marvel was holding the crown in terms of animated adaptations. Shows like X-Men and Spider-Man are considered top-notch superhero television classics, while other animated shows of the 90s like Iron Man and Fantastic Four are underappreciated. Other shows like Silver Surfer and Avengers United They Stand kinda sorta missed the mark. Well, Marvel was looking to add one more notch on their successful 90s cartoon championship belt with Captain America, the animated series. This would have actually been the fourth attempt at a Captain America cartoon, with the first being the 1966 series that, animation has come a long way. The second attempt was in the 80s with the show that would feature Captain America, who never got the super soldier serum, working directly for the president. The third attempt was in 1990, and this show would have been called Captain America and the Avengers and was pitched to ABC. I'm almost certain it was the inspiration for the 1991 video game. What I really want to talk about is the 1998 unproduced Captain America animated series. What's interesting about this show is that if it had been given a full season, it would have been the only attempt at a Captain America cartoon that would have focused on Cap during World War II, and it would have been the first to not feature the Avengers. Based on what I've researched about the show, producers wanted to change several elements of Captain America's character, including the name Steve Rogers. In this show, Captain America's real name would have been Tommy Tompkins, and Steve Rogers would have been a pseudonym created by the military. Because unnecessary changes to source material in cross-media adaptations wouldn't become a prominent thing for Marvel characters until the 2000s. The show would have stuck to the source material by featuring Captain America supporting characters like Bucky, Nick Fury, Gabe Jones from the Howling Commandos, and Peggy Carter, with the main villains being the Red Skull and Baron von Strucker. The minute and 10-second long demo for the series was storyboarded by animation legend Will Meugniot, along with his wife, Jo Meugniot, and Dave Simmons. There were at least 7 completed scripts for the show that were written by legendary comic book and animation writer Steve Englehart and the late great Michael Reeves. The series would have been produced by Saban Entertainment, who's probably best known for producing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and X-Men the Animated Series. Unfortunately, Captain America the Animated Series would get canceled before it could produce a single episode. Production of the show was stopped due to Marvel filing for bankruptcy in the late 90s. To be honest, out of all of the shows I've discussed, I'm the most interested in seeing what a Captain America series would look like now. Considering how the Marvel Cinematic Universe has made Captain America a household name and far more popular than he was when this show was being developed in the 90s, now might be the right time for Captain America to solidify himself in the world of animation.
And unlike that Deadpool cartoon, it's actually coming out.
Okay, this one's kind of cheating, but it's still on theme for the episode, and I wanted to mention it. There are a couple of misconceptions about this thing to iron out. No, this footage here is not technically the pilot for the Deadpool series. I don't think that series even got far enough for that. This demo is actually the studio Titmouse throwing their hat in the ring to be the animators for the show. That's why all the dialogue is just archival audio from the movie instead of something original written and recorded just for this.
I promise this gets worse for you, big boy!
Sometimes multiple animation studios will make a pitch demo like this to be selected for a project, and Floyd County Productions, the studio behind Archer and Hitmonkey, were the ones that were picked by FX to do the show. However, their animation demo has never been made public. It's not this one. Theoretically, there could be several little Deadpool shorts like this from different groups that were trying to get the job, and we'll likely never see those. But thankfully this one leaked online, so we have something to look at and stoke our imaginations and crush dreams. Donald Glover was apparently set to be the lead writer of the series, and posted a 15-page script online about Deadpool going on an adventure and lamenting the show falling through. Glover's script also implies that FX may have gotten cold feet because the show had an all-black writing staff and they didn't really understand their sense of humor. And yeah, I totally buy that. Hollywood is shitty like that. The script is not actually from a real episode that was being produced, as far as I can tell, but it was really funny, and if it was reflective of how the whole show would have felt, I think it would have been nice for Deadpool's first solo cartoon. But as of yet, he only has minor appearances in Ultimate Spider-Man and obscure Marvel anime projects to his name. During the energy crisis in the 1970s, the comics publisher Pendulum Press created the character Solarman as a way to educate kids about alternative energy sources. He was an alien named Davos, and he was from the sun! The character filled a different niche than the typical Marvel or DC characters by also being more of a public service announcement thing than the usual comics all about punching and dead parents. A decade later, Stan Lee contacted the author, David Oliphant, and asked to publish a new Solarman title under Marvel. In 1988, Margaret Loesch, Lee, and Oliphant teamed together to make a new version of Solarman for a new generation, with the intention of having a comic and a cartoon running concurrently. Both were flops. The comic only lasted 2 issues, and the cartoon had a single pilot created in 1988, released on VHS in 1989, and then aired only once in 1992. Maybe the transition at the time wasn't as noticeable to kids, but 80s cartoons and 90s cartoons are different. I always think about the difference between an 80s Spider-Man cartoon and a 90s one.
Gonna make you wish you never tried.
You
too, Pickle Puss.
By the time anyone saw this thing, it already started to feel dated. The theme song's pretty bumpin' though.
Can anyone save us? Solarman can!
I can't tell which one was written first, the comic or the episode, but one follows the other nearly panel for panel, although there's some dialogue differences. Our story follows a young aspiring comic artist named Benjamin Tucker, acquiring an alien device with secrets that it hid. It stuck itself upon his wrist, and now he's no ordinary kid. He's Solarman. Actually, the story starts further back, about an alien warlord using a ship that can drain the power from stars, and his lead scientist steals his greatest weapon to give to someone on Earth so the human race could defend itself. It's kind of like a cross between Toei Spider-Man and Green Lantern, especially since Kyle Rayner is a comic artist too. Benjamin Tucker's personal goals are to one day work at Marvel, and he even name drops a few of his favorite characters throughout the episode.
Boy, maybe someday Space Ranger will be right up with Spidey or old Greenskin. I've got the power to change myself, like a teenage Hulk.
But his dad is a sporty fitness nut that just wants him to exercise all the time.
Glad to see you exercising instead of wasting time drawing those comics. Just keep it up and you'll make the team yet.
Yeah, Dad. 12
I'm gonna hit the old sack. Got a 7-mile jog tomorrow morning. Good night, Joe.
His powers work so that the watch only lets him transform into Solarman when he's in direct sunlight, which I could see being an interesting conflict in future episodes, like if he has to fight a villain when it's overcast or at night. I kinda dig this one more than I thought I would. I thought it was interesting that they tried to really limit his powers, and he spends the majority of the episode in human form just trying to find a way to power up. So it had a little bit more stakes to it than if he was just indestructible Ultra Superman the whole time. Maybe the villain was pretty generic, but I think Solarman himself is kinda cool. I actually don't see any reason why this couldn't have been on TV alongside the original Turtles or He-Man or something. Even the animation looks surprisingly nice and doesn't have the usual cut corners you see from US animation in the 80s. Maybe I'm getting sentimental in my old age, but I think Solarman should have had at least a season or two so they could flesh out his powers more, maybe give him some better villains or something. This one's alright. And thankfully Solarman kind of persisted anyway, even though this failed. So here's to the Solarman fans, wherever you are.
So as an 80s kid, nothing is more sacred to me than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles is one of the most enduring and everlasting entertainment franchises of all time. But there was a brief period where the Turtles fell out of popularity. The mid to late 90s would see the Ninja Turtles franchise damn near die out from overexposure and poor quality shows and movies. Hell, in 1998, the live-action show Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation had me ready to throw away every single Ninja Turtle pie I ever bought. Also, did we really need Ninja Turtle pies? I think we did.
BAM! Did you take all of my money and invest it in a box full of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies?
Yes!
2001 would be a pretty significant year for the Turtles franchise. In the year 2000, Peter Laird would actually buy the remaining ownership rights of the franchise from co-creator Kevin Eastman. Peter Laird would spend most of 2001 trying to reinvigorate the franchise with a new comic book series and several pitches to television networks for a new animated series. Most people are familiar with the 2003 Ninja Turtle series, which in my opinion is the best animated version of the Ninja Turtles. But before that show went into production, there was another Ninja Turtles cartoon being developed. In fact, there were two. The first was based on a pitch from Mirage Studios to Warner Brothers. This series would have been more of an adaptation of the Mirage comic, which was darker in tone than the 80s series. Concept art for the show was produced which showed the Turtles looking more like their comic book counterparts. An animatic demo was also produced to show Warner Brothers what the show could have looked like. A line of preliminary action figures were also produced for the show, which were unreleased. The design for the figures would be used for the 2003 series.
I do like the grittiness of the art style in the 2D animatic, and the fact that they used temp music from Ants. It's like Bug's Life, but with 100% more Woody Allen.
The other unreleased pilot was also developed in 2001 and was a CGI series that was created to gain network interest. Unlike the previous animatic demo, which only featured Raphael, this one features all of the major Ninja Turtle characters, including April O'Neil, Casey Jones, and the Shredder. This one feels more like a preliminary version of what the 2003 series would become. And I'm not mad at that.
The CGI looks pretty expensive for the early 2000s, but it's still a little basic. If you thought the 2012 series had empty streets and too many reused set pieces, this would have been 1,000 times worse. The motion capture on display is simultaneously impressive for the time and kind of boring to watch because it looks so slow and rehearsed, and that's not what you want to see in animation. Oh my god, this looks like butt-ugly Martians. I'm glad we waited a few years before doing CGI Turtles so the early limitations of this medium wouldn't do them a disservice. And their later 3D outings have way better art direction.
Unfortunately, no network was interested in the show, and a year later in 2002, 4Kids would partner with Ninja Turtles creator Peter Laird and develop what would become the 2003 series. Before Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon made me reevaluate my love of the Justice League, and after CBS made a crappy sitcom version of the Justice League that was influenced by a great sitcom-influenced run of Justice League comics, Bruce Timm and James Tucker would conceptualize a pitch for a Justice League animated series for Kids WB in 2000. What's interesting is that Bruce Timm toyed with the idea of a Justice League animated series in the 90s that would have focused on lesser-known characters like Black Lightning and Mr. Miracle. What was eventually produced was a 1 and 22-second demo that was intended to sell the network on what a Justice League cartoon would look like. This version of the League would be very different from what we got, In the pilot presentation, we do get heavy hitters like Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, along with Jon Stewart and Hawkgirl and Martian Manhunter, who would make it to the actual series. But this version would have featured younger heroes like Robin, a female version of Cyborg, and instead of the Flash, we would have gotten Bart Allen, aka Impulse. The reason the younger heroes are in the pilot is because Bruce Timm thought that because the WB liked younger heroes in their shows, adding teen sidekicks would have increased the chances of the network buying the series. Luckily, it would be Cartoon Network that would pick up the Justice League series, and Bruce Timm would retool the series to reflect the more traditional version of the team. Honestly, if the WB wanted animated teen superheroes, they could have just made a Teen Titans show that was a spin-off from Batman the Animated Series with Dick Grayson forming the team. Why didn't we get that? Well, at least there was an animated Teen Titans PSA in the 80s based on the Wolfman and Perez run. I guess that counts, maybe? I don't know.
Friend of the channel, James Strecker over at the Watchtower Database, also did a video breaking down how every shot from this is reused animation from previous DC cartoons, so go check that out too.
X-Men.
Aw, I'm proud of these X-Men. This one's an interesting case because you could argue that this pilot did lead to a full series. There's still an X-Men the Animated Series made by largely the same crew as this pilot, but I think it counts as a failed pilot because that definitely wasn't this X-Men. Like, they went completely back to the drawing board and started over from scratch and retained nothing from this pilot. TV producer Margaret Loesch loved the X-Men and was convinced that it'd make a hit TV show, and around the time she was in charge of Fox Kids, she made a huge push for it to get a proper adaptation. The first thing that came of this was a half-hour pilot to convince the network that X-Men was worth a shot. They pulled some extra funding for this from the 13th episode of the RoboCop series that was in the process of flopping and opted to have Toei Animation animate this. So if you ever wondered why that show only had 12 episodes instead of the usual 13, that's why. You never wondered that. You didn't even know this show existed. You're like 19. Have you ever even watched RoboCop the movie? Maybe if it was shot in vertical you'd care. God, I've gotten so old. So fast.
When the Brotherhood of Mutant Terrorists and I are through.
Wow, you couldn't name them that after 2001. The result is a 1989 concept episode based loosely on Uncanny X-Men 129 through 139. Except skipping most of the story stuff and just making up some bullshit. It's pretty nostalgic for me personally. I didn't grow up with X-Men the Animated Series. I didn't watch that show until I was almost out of high school. It was just simply before my time. And when I was growing up, none of the channels I watched as a kid were airing reruns. Occasionally I'd catch the off episode of Spider-Man, but the rest of these shows completely escaped me until I was an adult. However, I did have this pilot on a VHS tape that I watched relentlessly as a kid. For a long time before I was on the internet, I assumed that this must have been an episode of X-Men the Animated Series, and I had heard about that show because my uncle told me he watched it in the 90s. This special is probably the reason that Nightcrawler is one of my favorite X-Men characters because he's featured so prominently. And somehow as a kid, I never noticed that Wolverine was Australian.
Don't worry about us, Dingo. We'll make sure we can. Of course, it's all been real. Get with it. The X-Men don't have room for whiny brats. So the kid got lucky that don't make her an X-Man. Not yet.
I also had the Spider-Friends episodes on tape, and he's Australian there too. I just never heard it until now.
How you doing? Want a piece of fruit? Hold it, bullet head. You'll have to go through us first.
Is this the same universe as that? The original Marvel animated universe? I don't know, who cares? The Toei Animation does this pilot a lot of favors in the visual department. It really has that retro anime look, and I definitely like these character designs. The X-Men roster they used is pretty solid, but I would have traded Dazzler for Jean Grey because you gotta have the drama. You need the drama. The other show understood this. The story of the pilot is how all X-Men adaptations start. A teenage mutant girl is taken in by the school and serves as a vehicle for the audience to learn what the X-Men are all about. She's afraid of her powers, but with some support from the team, she ends up saving the day at the end and realizing that being a mutant can be kind of cool too. They all do it. It's the only way to start an X-Men adaptation. This time, Magneto is going to destroy the world by redirecting a comet from his base on Asteroid M. Kitty Pryde sounds like the twins from Rugrat, and she's a dick to poor Nightcrawler.
No, no! Get away from me!
I don't like how Colossus calls her Little One.
Oh, it is good, little one. Colossus like rain.
It bothers me deeply. I think the biggest failing of this is that they really don't get to the meat of what X-Men's all about. It's just about the spectacle and the adventure, and introducing a bazillion characters with really interchangeable personalities. Like, the action looks amazing, and the animation is breathtaking, but there's no substance. We don't really learn anything about these characters except that they all have different accents. The most they do is just have human characters calling them mutant like it's a dirty word.
Here you are, Liebchen.
Thank you.
Hey, stay away, you filthy mutants!
Take this mutie we're hauling tonight, for example.
He's a mutant, a stinking mutant!
Not one word, kitty. They're so busy doing G.I. Joe versus Cobra shenanigans that they don't get into any of the themes of prejudice and inequality. Apparently decisions like this were the result of too many executive cooks in the kitchen suggesting random things to cram in there. Crocodile Dundee is popular, putting Australian in there. Throw in so many characters it's dizzying and hard to follow. It just makes me appreciate Night of the Sentinels even more, because it's a similar concept, but it's so much better at distinguishing the personalities of the team and putting all the real X-Men stuff right at the forefront. There's Sentinels, and government, and not fitting in, and battling racism, and tyranny, and lasers. And here we just have some good fights in an admittedly pretty cool setting, but nothing under the surface. Margaret Loesch wasn't really stoked on this interpretation of her favorite comic either, but she told her bosses she would still bet anything on an X-Men animated series, and after pushing so hard for it, they told her the series better be a success or she'd be fired. Thankfully, the show did so well that she got the biggest I told you so of the 90s. She was fucking right! The show was so popular that it's still going today. As for Pryde of the X-Men, well, it had a decent life on home media for kids like me, and it was adapted by Konami as a classic arcade game where Colossus makes that funny noise. Plus, the season finale of X-Men 97 took a lot of inspiration from this pilot, and even had the characters end up in the same costumes on their way to Asteroid M. Maybe it wasn't successful in landing this vision of the team on television, but Pryde of the X-Men has a damn solid legacy that runs through the blood of X-Men the Animated Series and beyond. So, in all the ways that matter, I guess this one actually is a success. Thank God we got Cal Dodd as Wolverine, though. I can't stand this accent.
Hold it! The kid stays here. She'll just get in the way.
We were also going to include Gen 13, but it wasn't intended to launch a TV series, so it felt a bit off topic. So maybe we'll save that for a rainy day for unreleased superhero movies. Going into this video, I was hoping to find more full episodes, but it seems like those don't get released or leaked as often as their live-action equivalents. And thus, a lot of these were animation demos or test footage, but still just enough to give an idea of what we're missing. Thanks again to Cytonius for going over these with me, and you should definitely subscribe to us both for more of that delicious content. Here's to 2025, the 10th anniversary of me doing comic book videos and the year where I'll definitely hit 300,000 subs. Right? Right? I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribed to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time!